They were gone, all of them. 115 English men, women, and children vanished from their small settlement on the edge of the known world. The only clue, a single word carved into a wooden post, Croatoan. To understand how it came to this, we have to go back 3 years. It was July of 1587. John White, appointed governor, led his colonists ashore on Roanoke Island in the land they called Virginia. This wasn't the first English attempt here. Earlier, all male expeditions had come and gone, leaving behind a ruined fort and tense relations with the local Croatoan people. But this was different. White's group included families. Their goal was permanence. They were to build the first lasting English settlement in the Americas. They repaired the old fort. They began to build cabins. And on August 18th, 1587, Virginia Dare was born. The first English child born in the New World, John White's own granddaughter. But the promise of a new start was fragile. Supplies ran low. Tensions with some native groups simmered, and the land itself seemed to turn against them. Tree ring evidence now tells us the years 1587 to 1589 saw the most severe drought in 8 centuries for that coast. Crops would have failed. Springs would have dried up. The pressure was immense. So the colonists made a decision. They urged Governor White to sail back to England for more supplies and support. It was a risky move, but it seemed the only one. He left in late 1587, promising a swift return. He told them if they had to move, to carve their destination into a post or tree, and if they were under attack, to add a Maltese cross next to the name. White's return, however, was anything but swift. England was at war. The Spanish Armada was bearing down. Every ship was commandeered for the defense of the realm. For 3 long years, John White was stranded, desperate to get back to his daughter, his granddaughter, and his people. He finally secured passage in 1590. His ship approached Roanoke Island in mid-August. Smoke was seen rising from the area, a hopeful sign. But when the landing party rowed ashore, they found only silence. The settlement was empty, not destroyed, empty. The houses had been taken down, not burned. The fort's defensive palisade was still standing. It looked, according to White's own account, like a place that had been deliberately and orderly abandoned. There were no signs of a struggle, no bodies, no graves. It was as if the entire community had simply packed up and walked away. Then they found the carvings. On a tree, the letters CRO, and on a main post of the fort, the full word Croatoan. White's heart must have lifted. He remembered the plan. And crucially, there was no Maltese cross carved beside the word. No sign of duress. Croatoan was the name of an island about 50 miles to the south, modern-day Hatteras Island. It was also the name of the people who lived there, allies of the English. One of their members, Manteo, had even traveled to England and back with earlier expeditions. It was the logical, agreed-upon clue. The colonists had gone to Croatoan. White urged the ship's captain to sail south immediately. But the weather had other plans. A massive storm, likely a hurricane, blew in. The ship was battered, its cables snapped, and anchor lost. Facing ruin, the captain made the call to abandon the search and run for the open Atlantic. White was forced to watch the coastline recede, never to return. The trail went cold. So what really happened after the carvings were made? The theories began almost immediately and haven't stopped. The first and simplest is catastrophe. Maybe they all died from disease or starved in that terrible drought. Maybe a hurricane wiped them out, but that doesn't fit the scene White found. An orderly departure suggests a plan, not a panicked last stand, and no one ever found a mass grave. Theory 2. Attack. Perhaps a hostile native group, or even Spanish soldiers, killed or captured them all. But again, the evidence on the ground didn't show a fight, and the missing Maltese cross was a clear signal from the colonists. We left willingly. That brings us to the third, and for many modern historians, most compelling explanation: assimilation. The colonists, facing starvation on a parched island, decided to do what humans have done for millennia. They moved in with neighbors who knew how to survive. They went to Croatoan. This wasn't a wild guess. English accounts from the Jamestown settlement, founded 20 years later, are filled with intriguing whispers. Captain John Smith and others wrote that Powhatan Indians spoke of people who dressed like Englishmen living to the south. They told of villages where the inhabitants had light skin and grey eyes. One chief reportedly claimed to have participated in killing most of a group of white colonists around 1607, a group that had been living peacefully with native allies for years. This timeline fits. A small band of Roanoke survivors, integrated into a Chesapeake tribe, wiped out by a Powhatan raid to prevent them from joining the new Jamestown settlers. Archaeology adds some tantalizing, if disputed, pieces. On Hatteras Island, excavations have uncovered a mix of English and native artifacts from the late 1500s, a rapier hilt, a slate writing tablet, a gun lock, all found alongside Croatoan pottery and tools. It suggests a blending of communities. One historian of the area now bluntly states, "They were never lost. They just moved in with their friends." The most detailed modern synthesis comes from the first colony foundation. They propose a split migration. A small group, perhaps the initial scouts, went south to Croatoan Island, as the carving indicated. The main body, however, may have gone north toward the Chesapeake Bay, the colony's original intended destination. They would have split into smaller bands, living with different groups. The Choh Roanoke, the Tusku Roharu, along the rivers of what is now North Carolina. Their descendants might have persisted for generations in places with names like Okuna-Howan, places later English explorers heard about but never quite found. In the end, the fate of the lost colony is a story about lines that were crossed and lines that vanished. The thin line between survival and extinction, erased by a historic drought. The cultural line between English settler and native neighbor, blurring through marriage and shared hardship. The line of history itself, which goes dark in August of 1590. We are left with the quiet of an abandoned fort, the ghost of a carved word, and the enduring mystery of over 100 lives that stepped out of the European record and into the vast, unwritten landscape of America. They were here, and then they were somewhere else.